Thank you everyone for joining us today. And welcome to our webinar, Harnessing the Power of Generative AI at Camp and When Not to. In this webinar, I'm going to go over the overview of AI and its capabilities. I'll share tips for using it effectively, and I'm going to provide recommendations for how camps can harness AI technology to enhance your programs and operations. Ultimately, my goal is to equip you with a good, solid foundation so you can make informed decisions about if and how to implement AI in your organization. I'm Spencer Mroczek, the Digital Experience Strategist at UltraCamp. Sorry about that, hit that twice. So that is a huge mouthful, so I'm gonna say it one more time. I'll say my name a little bit slower because most people miss it the first time. So Spencer Mroczek, and I'm the Digital Experience Strategist. In essence, my job at UltraCamp is to build bridges between digital technology and people. Most people love the benefits of technology, but not so much the using part, especially if it involves too much thinking. So at UltraCamp, it's my job to work with the various different departments and teams here at UltraCamp and kind of reimagine the ways in which we could better utilize digital technologies in order to improve an experience or perhaps create a new one. And as part of my job, I've been using and exploring generative AI, such as CampGPT, before most people even knew it was a thing. And as I've begun to use generative AI, I've begun to notice something. And the thing is, it's completely different than how we have used any digital technology in the past. This means it can be a bit tricky to get started because we don't really have a good framework for approaching generative AI and making it work for us. AI is a fundamental shift for how we use technology. For the last several decades, all digital technology followed a certain pattern. Mainly, it required a person to first understand what it is they're looking at, how this specific technology functions, and this requires a user to go about things in a very specific order of operations to get the desired result. This may be a click a link, press a button, tick some check boxes, click another button, select something from a drop-down menu, and then finally hit confirm and hope you get the result that you were wanting. And if you do this correctly, you would. And if you didn't, you have to kind of go back or you're searching the help desk to figure out, okay, what checkbox did I miss? Generative AI changes this and how technologies interact with. Because now we're entering a point where in order to get what you want with technology, all you need to do is express what you want, which sounds pretty amazing, but because we're so used to using technology that is limited to input and select boxes and clicking links, a lot of people kind of get stuck when using generative AI. Because we're just simply not used to the freedom of expressing what we want in a way that a machine can kind of understand and give us the result we want. But before we get too far down that road, I want to talk specifically about what is generative AI. Well, in the 1980s, there was an argument and thought experiment that was kind of published about AI, which is, again, 1980s. It's kind of cool, I found. It's now known as the Chinese room. So it's been gaining a lot of traction lately because it's actually really holds true to how AI is working these days. So in this thought experiment, the author says something to this extent. So imagine a room with an English-speaking person inside who knows no Chinese. This person has a books full of rules that allow them to respond to Chinese characters that are slipped through the door in Chinese. So people outside the room are sending in strings of Chinese characters, and the person inside uses these rule books to find appropriate responses in Chinese, and they send those back out. So to the people outside, it appears as though the person inside understands Chinese perfectly, but in reality, they don't understand a lick of Chinese. They're simply following a set of instructions that's guiding them on how to arrange letters and symbols in a specific order and send those back out based on what they got. Generative AI is very much like this Chinese room. It appears to possess and understand natural language, appears to possess intelligence, but it's merely manipulating symbols based on a set of rules. Generative AI is created through a training process that results in a neural network. So during this training, an AI is provided with a large amount of data, and it's trained to analyze the data, and it's trained to make predictions based on this data. So during this training period, the model is then given feedback on the accuracy of its predictions. And eventually this process forms what is called the neural network. So this neural network is very similar to the stack of rule books in this Chinese room. However, it's important to remember that generative AI, it's fundamentally a pattern matching and predictive system and nothing more. And so now that we have a kind of basic understanding of generative AI, I want to discuss some of the top free models that are out there really for anyone to try. So there are currently 3 models out there that are worth mentioning. Each one of these models currently has a generous free version that you can use. However, it's important that you understand that if you are using a free version of AI, it means that they're letting you use it for free because they are using your interactions to help them improve it. Now, this does not mean that every conversation you have with an AI model is going to be learned by that AI. In fact, this would be disastrous for any AI company. Imagine if John Smith accidentally put his credit card information in at one point, and then Sally's like, hey, what's John Smith's credit card? And the AI is like, here, this is what it is. That would be the end of that AI company. All right, so these companies are very particular on what they train their model on. So rather what happens when you use these models, when you mark a conversation, it's kind of helpful and not helpful. This then potentially goes through a series of AI and human evaluations to determine why that feedback, why that response from the model was helpful or not helpful. And then the model is trained based on that feedback. But either way, you should never put sensitive information really into any freely publicly accessible AI. Make sure you check into things before you do. And that goes with any model anything outside of generative AI. Just know what is being done with your data. Now let's look at these different models. So first we're going to go kind of from least known to most known. Claude is actually one of my absolute favorite ones out there. Claude is an excellent writer. It's created by a company called Anthropic. And again, it's probably the best writer out there. One of the best use cases for Claude is, and uses, I should say, is the amount of text that you can input. So currently, Claude can handle many times more text than any of the other models out there. So depending on the content, it can do around 200 pages of text at a time. So you can paste up to 200 pages of text into it. And so this is great for summarizing large technical papers, if you're trying to get certain graphs or things of that sort, if you've just got a lot of information that you want to discuss with it. The next free model is Google's Bard. Bard has had a bit of a rough start. They're making some promising improvements. Its most popular use case is for using it like you would use Google search. If you ask it questions, it's actually able to search the web and find up-to-date information and write specific answers to your questions based on the information it found. This saves you the time from having to read multiple web pages of information. The next, and the model almost everyone knows about, is ChatGPT. Now, I need to say something here. GPT is actually very difficult for me to enunciate each time. So often you might hear me say GPT or something extent. You may also hear me say Chat. At the office and at my house, everyone knows Chat. Chat is what I call Chat GPT because I don't like saying that every time. They've got the worst name, but I like the model. So just know if you accidentally hear me say Chat, just know I mean Chat GPT. So what I love about ChatGPT, it's one of the ones that got generative AI famous, but beyond that, they are some of the most powerful models out there. For ChatGPT's free plan, you're gonna have access to its 3.5 model, which is really fast But what really sets GPT apart from any other model out there is its 4 model. The GPT-4 is what I'm going to be kind of utilizing today since it's the most stable and consistent. So you'll kind of get to see that. And GPT-4 is the best AI problem solver out there. It's really good at handling kind of complex tasks and prompts and just multi-part problems that you give it. One of the best things that I appreciate about ChatGPT and OpenAI in general is their terms of service and just what they do with your data is very crystal clear. You don't need a law degree to figure out what to do and how to protect your data. One of the things they talk about is even if on a free plan, it's going to default to be able to use your data or your conversations for training. But if you wish, you can turn that off. You go into settings, there's a toggle for your history, your conversation history. If you toggle that off, what they state as of today, this video might change, but they state that they will keep your conversations for up to 30 days in case of abuse. That way they can investigate. And then after that, it's going to be permanently deleted. They're not going to train your conversations in their models at all. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, I want to talk specifically about prompting these models. A prompt is really simply a set of instructions that you want the generative AI to follow. For example, today we're going to be using ChatGPT. But these principles I'm going to talk about, it's going to work for any generative model that you use. It's going to essentially work the same. So there's a lot of noise I've noticed out there when it comes to prompting. So if you were to Google ChatGPT prompts, you're going to find 10 prompts for this and 20 prompts for that. You may even come across websites that sell prompts. I think all of this has convinced most people that you can't do much with generative AI unless you have the perfect prompt. However, it's just not the case. When approaching generative AI, I think it's important to think of a prompt as providing guidance. So in other words, think of prompting in the same way as guiding a brand new intern on their first day and telling them what they should do or not do. Prompting is just about communicating instructions. So if you're great at communicating instructions, or if you're great at delegating and equipping others to succeed at their assigned tasks, then you're going to be pretty good at prompting. If communicating instructions is a weak area for you, then you might struggle with prompting at first. But fortunately, communication is a skill that can absolutely be improved. And we're going to be talking about that today. And by improving your prompting ability, you're also going to improve your ability to communicate effectively in other areas. That's just something I've noticed in my own self as I've worked with these models and improved how I communicate instruction and guidance. It's just helped me in other areas when it comes to communicating. So when it comes to a prompt or guidance, there's really several components that make up a really effective prompt. That is going to be role, context, task, example or steps, and the format. Now, these are just the individual parts that can be combined in any order to make a very effective and robust prompt. Not all parts are needed. In fact, there's only one component that is required, and that is a task. Without a task, or I should say without a clear task that the AI understands, it's going to just take its best guess at what you're wanting. So we've got prompt task right here. Let's just take this and run it into GPT, and let's just kind of see what it gives us. All right, just a moment. All right, so create an advertising campaign to promote our. All right. Let's outline a strategy that focuses on the unique experiences your camp offers. Let me zoom in for that. So it's asking lots of questions. I just wanted an advertising campaign to promote our camp, and I don't know what I'm going to do with this. This is the type of result that I see a lot of people getting. And anytime I hear someone say something to to the extent that generative AI is not useful or it's not capable, I always ask them, well, how are you prompting it? Because again, what I showed you, this really isn't that helpful. And this is using GPT-4, the smartest, most capable model in the world today, and it still can't get it. So I always bring it back to, how are you prompting the model? Sure enough, the majority of the time, what I see when people are frustrated about generative AI, they're using a 1 to 2 line task prompt. In fact, a task-only prompt, what is referred to as a zero-shot prompt in the prompt engineering world, is the #1 type of prompt that is used by really anyone that uses generative AI. So just about everyone, that's all they really try with generative AI, is this task-only prompt. So for example, create 5 Facebook posts to encourage people to register to our camp. Create a list of rainy day activities for a summer day camp. Create a website heading and description into the homepage of my camp website. With generative AI, you get out what you put into it. In other words, kind of garbage in, garbage out. Imagine if someone like a marketer comes up to your camp. It's like, hey, I'm going to do some free work for you. And you just say, great, create 5 Facebook posts to encourage people to register for our camp, and you walk away. They're not going to give you a good result. It's the same thing, whereas in order for the model to give you a good result, it's got to understand more. This is why we have the other components that make up an effective piece of instruction. Now, we don't need all of these components in a prompt, but there is an order of importance. So a good prompt, what you kind of see is, 1, a task is required. Context and example or steps are important, while role and format is just nice to have. So let's take just one more component and let's add it to our advertising campaign. Let me just start a new one in here in chat. Oops, sorry, that was the wrong one. All right. So, all right. So, advertising campaign for Grace Bible Camp, ages 6 through 12. Campaign title: Discover, Grow, and Shine at Grace Bible Camp. Our campaign centered around 3 core themes: discovery, exploring faith. It's discussing visual and designs, advertising material. Ultimately, we see some better elements here, but it's still, so it's better, but it's still not that great. So it's still not really technically giving us full on content, but there is some improvement. So here we have, all we're doing is now we're just giving them context and task, but it's still not working that great for us. So let's look at how to potentially improve it. One of the things I've learned is, when you're trying to come up with an effective prompt, if we're saying that generative AI is a very useful tool for a lot of things, then what we're also saying is you should use generative AI to actually help you with generative AI. And so one of the things I've learned, and I've done, and it's really helped me in my prompting, is I use generative AI to help me with my prompting. So I do this. One of the things is, if I'm getting results that I'm not happy with, I'll take my prompt, I'll put it into ChatGPT, and I'll ask, how can my instruction be improved? I tend to use the word instruction when I'm referring to a prompt, just because these models, they understand instruction than they do a prompt. Prompt is, it's a hot word today, but it's not necessarily was a hot word when these models got trained. So instruction just tends to work better. So with this advertising campaign, that's what I did. I took it in, I'm like, okay, how can I improve it? And it gave me a bunch of different information and things I didn't even think about, some potential ways to advertise and all that. And I took it and I created a much more robust prompt. Again, so I used generative AI, and it helped me come up with a very kind of complex prompt, but this did not take 30 minutes, not take an hour. It really only took a couple minutes. And I put this together. So here we go. We've got our role. You can advertise it for Christian day camps. We've got our context, we've got our specific task, and we have some steps in here. So we're clarifying, in order to complete your task, you must choose a target audience. We need to develop some key messages and slogans. We need to select the media channels for promotion and develop the written content for the selected channels. Let's put this in to chat and let's see what we get. All right, this is that full prompt. All right, so it's got the target audience. So now we've got some key messages here, building tomorrow's leaders on a foundation of faith. And now we're getting some actual content. So now it's writing us some Facebook posts. Join us at Grace Bible Camp for unforgettable summer of joy and learning. Our kids age 6 to 12 combined. So it's going on to these Facebook posts. All right, so this is ultimately a much better prompt, and it's definitely getting us a much better result. Now, I want to talk about some of these parts here, specifically a role. A role is one of those where, like in this specific prompt, we could probably leave off the role, which is this: you're an advertiser. We leave this off. We're not going to see much of a difference in our prompt. This is because we have so much other great content in this prompt already. So a year ago, assigning a role to a generative AI was found to make these responses much more accurate and reliable. In fact, it greatly reduced the chances that generative AI would hallucinate. And a hallucination, when we're referring to generative AI, means that a generative AI can sometimes say things that sound really, really good and appear to be solid facts, but they are complete fabrications. So if we remember the illustration or the thought experiment about the Chinese room, AI recognizes patterns. They know the rules, but it does not truly understand the language as we do. So when we use a role in our prompt, it makes the AI look at patterns as they relate to that role, and it helps it come up with better content. So let's look at another example, and you'll see what I mean. So again, this is the task-only prompt. We're going to just try this real quick. So suggest 3 innovative rainy day activities for our summer camp. So we're going to throw this in there, see what we get just for a baseline. Let's see what we get. So asking for innovative rainy day activities for our summer camp. And its first one is an indoor camping experience. Transform a large indoor space like a gym or hall into a makeshift campground. Set up tents or make forts. I mean, that's all right. I think that's kind of odd. Okay, it's not that great. So Camp's Got Talent Show. I like the name of that. That's actually pretty cool. That's not a bad one there. But let's try something different. So we kind of see what we got here. It's not that great. And depending on what type of camp, it's just not that useful at all. It's not that helpful to us. So let's try something different and let's assign a role to it. This time, we're going to tell it, so you are a camp activity specialist for a wilderness adventure camp. Suggest 3 innovative rainy days activities for summer camp. So we're just adding a role. And let's see what this does. Let's go in here, I'm gonna add a new one. All right. Indoor camping skills workshop. Okay, so remember, this is for a wilderness adventure camp. So indoor camping skills workshop, this can be a fun and educational session where campers learn essential camping skills that are usually taught outdoors. For me, I think this is a much more viable option. This is something that if I'm an adventure camp, I'm going to be a lot more interested in. Hey, if it's rainy, this is a great chance to take advantage of the rain and learn these survival skills. Let's do it in there. Nature-inspired art and craft session, environmental awareness, conservation education. So just by adding in a role, we're seeing how it's generating differently. Roles definitely have an effect. I'm seeing in some ways they're having less of an impact, but that's largely because more so if you're giving it good content, you need that less. But if you are going quick with your prompting and you only have a task, assign a role to it, and you're going to see it generate in a complete different way as we did in this example. All right, we're going to look at a example now so for instance, so we've got role, context, task, example, or steps, and format. Let's look at a more complete prompt. And the prompt I'm going to show you is actually too big for PowerPoint, so I'm going to just put it right into ChatGPT, and we'll look at it in there. I'll just hit enter so we can see it. All right, let me zoom in so we can just talk about what's going on here. All right, so this is a very complex prompt. This prompt, it's not something that you should be doing every time. I create these types of prompts that utilize steps for things that I need to do often. Steps and examples are similar concepts when it comes to prompting, and I'm going to show an example next. But typically, if you have a good example of what you want it to do, you don't need to break things down step by step. You can, and it can get you a better result, but it's typically not worth the extra effort in most cases. So I'll show you how to utilize example again in our next prompt. But for now, let's just look at with steps alone. So here, I already hit enter. And so what it's going to do is ask me for the thing that I told it to do in the very first step. So ask me for the age group and subject matter for the activities that are being created. And I realized I didn't read. So this prompt is for, let's just say classrooms. If you are, depending how your campus set up, if you're aftercare program or whatever, this is a potential use case for that. So it's asking for my age of the people we have in a class and the type of activity. So let's just put in here, let's do 10 through 13, and let's just try team building. All right, so in a couple seconds, we're getting great activity ideas listed in the table, all spelled out. One, we're seeing the activity name, the instructions, the learning outcomes. And why we're seeing it in a table is because this is that format step that I haven't talked about yet. But this is where, when formatting, so GPT is always going to try to guess the format that you want something in. So depending on how you say it, it may do it in a table, it may do it in steps, it may do it in something else. But we can also ask it very specifically to output in a certain format. So this could be HTML and CSS, for instance. So if you are working on an email to send out to campers and you want it in a responsive format to be able to send this email to people and it looks good on a phone, you can go to GPT and you can have it take your email and output it using HTML and CSS, and then you can just put that into any HTML editor, and there you go. You have your coded responsive email. So you can also ask GPT to output in most formats you can kind of think of. So this could be bullet points, steps, code, heading styles like H1, H2, H3. You can be very specific. So this is what I did here, is just told it, hey, put it in a table with these columns. This is one of my favorite prompts. I really like this one. Next, let's look at using examples. Now, I think this next one we're going to go through is probably going to be your favorite type of prompt, and I guess it is mine as well. It's one I use quite often. So using examples. By giving GPT an example of something and telling it what we want it to do with that example, we can save a lot of time. This is even true when it comes to prompting. So let's say we have a prompt and we really like the structure of it and how it works. So like the classroom prompt that we just did, for example, I really like that. Well, if we take that prompt and we use it as an example, we can get GPT to actually do the hard work for us, because that's the goal, right? Have the machine do it and have it create another like it. So let's look at this. I'm going to run it and then we'll walk through it again. Okay. So here, essentially, I'm just telling it, I'm giving some context here. So your job is to write prompts that can be used in ChatGPT. I will give you a task and you will analyze that task and decide what parts are missing based on the example prompt provided below. You will then rewrite the prompt so that it fits a similar structure as the example. So that's just me communicating, hey, this is my expectations for what I want you to do. And here's an example. This will help guide you. And so this right here, this is exactly what we just put into GPT the last time. That's what gave that classroom table thing. But this time I'm doing something different. I'm wanting it to create a job description. That's my prompt. But I don't want to take the time to write the context, write a detailed task, write the steps. I don't want that, because I have a really good prompt that I think would work for this, which is this classroom prompt. So I'm having GPT do the hard work. So here it is. So all right, based on the structure of the example provided, I'll rewrite the task for creating a job description. All right, so now this is the new prompt that I just created for me. Your role is to create a comprehensive and detailed job description. A well-crafted job description is essentially for attracting the right candidates. And let's look at this step. So now it's also included these steps. So ask me for the specific job role and industry for which the job description is being created. So it's working in the same way the classroom prompt, but it's all fine-tuned now for creating job description. So I'm curious on how well this is going to do. Let's just take it. Let's run it. All right. So now it's asked me some questions. What's the specific job title, role, industry, culture, values? These are actually all, yeah. Can you describe the company's cultures and values so that I can reflect these in the job description? That's pretty cool that it's asking that. I'm lazy today and we've got stuff to go through. So I'm going to just say camp, counselor, let's do resident camp. And I'm going to say, you decide the rest, because I like its questions, but I don't have time for all of its questions. You decide the rest. All right. Great. And let's see. So we're 30 seconds in roughly into this prompt and we're getting a job description, which is really pretty cool. It's what's nice too, as you can see, smart enough. It's the part that we need to fill in, like at the camp. It's bracketing so we can easily kind of replace it. No matter what, you should always read through everything GPT writes before you ever put that into the public. Number one rule. We'll talk about more of that in a little bit. So here we go, maybe 45 seconds total since, yeah, maybe. And we have a job description. I guess it's still working on it, but that's pretty cool. All right. AI is an incredible tool, as we have just noted. What it can do is incredible. We've seen that when you give AI, generative AI, good guidance, it can certainly perform complex tasks and jobs. There are implications of this technology, though, and I think it's important to discuss this. Now, the news is doing a good job of talking about this technology and how it can be used for misinformation and how it's going to destroy the job market and things of that sort. All that stuff is getting plenty of news coverage, and which is, fine. But I want to specifically talk about the potential misuse and danger of generative AI in the camp industry. Ultimately, camp is about human relationships. building confidence, developing social skills, and making friends. This is probably why the camp industry is probably one of the safest industries in terms of AI ever being able to replace humans in their role. In fact, I believe that in the next few years, we're going to see a major boom in the camp industry as people start to seek out more human-to-human connections. However, there's still a danger of AI replacing something in the camp industry. I believe that danger is empathy and deep connection. AI can very much mimic empathy. It can at times write more effective, heartfelt letters than what we could do. So the danger really lies in the type of things we decide to replace with AI. And I think it's best to kind of show you an example of what I mean. I built an AI little tool here just for this talk. And this tool is private. I've got no plans to make it public. But soon, I think tools like what I'm about to show you is going to be all over the place. So some context of the tool I'm about to show you. Let's just say we are a summer-long resident camp. Keeping the parents up to date about their child is so important. And so here is a way that AI could be used to update your parents every single day. And all you need to do is just type a certain amount of words. Let's look at this. All right. So this is a customized version of ChatGPT. And again, this is private. So I'm going to put into here. So if I click this, it's just going to put in Jane, Sally, cabin scary stories. So all I'm having to do to write an update to parents is write the child's name first, their friend's name that they've made on this camping trip second, and something that they enjoy. GPT is going to do the rest. So let's see what it's writing here. All right, so it's giving us different drafts here. So we had casual, enthusiastic. Hey there. Hope this email finds you well. Just want to drop a quick note about how Jane is doing at camp. She's absolutely thriving. She made a new buddy, Sally, and they've been inseparable. You won't believe it, but they've become the dynamic duo of our cabin scary story sessions. Jane's imagination is incredible. The laughter and excitement during these storytelling times are the best. Jane's really shining here, and it's such a joy to see. Can't wait to share more of her camp escapades with you. Stay tuned. If a camp sent this letter about my daughter, it would make my week. This would convince me to send my daughter to this camp every year because they took the time, care, and thought to write such an awesome letter. But they didn't. They wrote 3 words, and a machine wrote it. Do we see the danger here, or is it just me? There are actually 3 big dangers here. The most obvious one is that we are tricking parents, that this would be tricking parents into thinking we took the time to write such a heartfelt, meaningful letter. That's a biggie. And I don't think any parent's going to be okay with it, being tricked in that way. The second, and not so obvious danger, is what automating chances to emotionally connect with another person does to us. What if instead, so imagine if we automated every emotionally hard or emotionally meaningful moment. What if instead of feeling this, we were to type a couple of words into something and that hard task is done? That would be nice, but what does this do to us? I honestly don't know, as this is brand new technology and there is just not enough good data out there for anyone to really know. I don't think it's going to be great. The third danger, and probably the most scary one, they didn't think about, is that your staff could actually be utilizing generative AI in ways that you don't know about and you're not comfortable with because you're not having conversations with them about it. So even if your counselors never write personally to parents, they could very well use AI to complete tasks that you think they are doing personally. And maybe that's fine, maybe it's not. The point is I'm trying to make here is that every camp is unique and has unique principles and values. You may even disagree with me when it comes to my point about the dangers of generative AI in this type of use case. And that's fine. You have the right to your own opinions. But the point here is, do you know how your staff is using generative AI? Are you having these conversations? If not, that is a danger. So this is going to bring us to our last discussion point. Have a clear AI use policy and discuss this with your staff. AI is cutting edge. AI can absolutely save you time. And you should, my opinion, this is my opinion, you should be using it for certain things. It is a game changer, but it can be a game changer in both ways. Make sure you're having conversations, you're having policies, you're working on those, you are wrestling with those big issues, because I can almost guarantee that just about every counselor, your high school or college counselor you hire this year is using generative AI, because that is what they used to write their resume and cover letter. So at UltraCamp, we've been having regular discussions about AI. And I've been meeting with different team leaders here at UltraCamp to really wrestle and really figure out what our principles on AI really is. Because that's what I felt, that's the first step that we needed to really go through is, what do we value? And just in general, what's our values and principles when it relates to AI? So I'm going to show you something. We're still actively working. AI is a very fast moving world. We're trying to do our best to kind of keep an eye on things and adjust as we go along. But I'm showing you kind of what we have now as far as our principles on AI. So here, if you were to go down to our footer, you're going to see this thing called AI use principles. I'm showing this one, so you just don't know what we value, but two, because this, I think, will give you a great maybe starting point for discussing things with your own staff. So feel free to go on a footer, go on to here, see these UltraCamp statement of principles on AI use. Sorry, I just realized I got some little typo there. And start a discussion with your staff. And also, I'd love to know if you do so and how that goes. So let me just kind of read through this real quick. So at UltraCamp, human connections are at the heart of everything we do. And in our discussions, that's what we really hammered out is like, yes, use generative AI. Yes, we should be using generative AI in our operations and things of that sort. But human connections must remain at the heart of everything we do. We are dedicated to using AI thoughtfully, and we're automating routine tasks to allow more time for meaningful human relationships. And so we've kind of broken things down, like, for instance, being transparent about our use. All AI interfaces, so if we don't really have much as of yet, but let's just say we create some tools, you're going to know what's AI and what's not. We're not going to try to trick you. We're not going to try to like make you think we're taking more time to help you than what we actually are. We're going to be very clear about how we use AI when you're interacting with AI. And so please go on here and use this as a starting point for discussing things with your camp. All right, I'd like to open this up for questions and Donnie.
That's absolutely fantastic. Spencer, thank you so much. As we transition into some questions, I'll just drop this in the chat for you guys. Here's several links that we find helpful to different tools, and then also a beta tool on our website, as well as a blog post for you to check out more. So if you have questions, we'll just pause right now to say we recognize that we're 47 minutes in. So if you need to take off, feel free. But also, we'd be curious to see if you have any questions. If you have a question, feel free to open up that Q&A module there at the bottom of the screen and drop in a question or two for Spencer. And kind of while we're waiting for some of those questions to come in, if you have any, you can also, I guess, drop them in the chat. But the Q&A allows people to upvote. Just recognize this webinar is being recorded for posterity, and we will release it on our website here in a few days. So if you want to go back and look at some of these prompts, some of these processes, it'll be coming out shortly. You can go back and check it out, and you can share it with someone. And also, we want to look out for the newsletter. Also, just another point is we want to hear from you. So if you want to connect with Spencer, if you have more questions about generative AI, how it works, some case use examples, maybe anything in that nature, feel free to reach out to him, Spencer at ultracamp.com. And if you have other ideas for topics that you think would be helpful to you that UltraCamp Academy could delve into and bring you more webinars like this, academy@ultracamp.com is the email address. We have a couple questions coming in here. The first one is I saw is ChatGPT 4 free. Is it, Spencer?
Yeah, so I can answer. So technically, no, but there is it's not even a workaround. It's a legit thing. So Bing Chat, so it's Bing, B-I-N-G. This is Microsoft's thing. So if you use Microsoft's browser, I think the homepage, you can have access to Bing Chat. Bing Chat uses GPT-4. So, and you don't have to pay for that. So in order to use GPT-4 through OpenAI's website or ChatGPT, yes, you need to pay $20 a month, but you can actually just go to Bing Chat and you can use GPT-4 free there. And it can generate images and things of that sort within Bing Chat as well.
On that note, we had another question here about AI and imagery. So I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about using AI prompts for photos and maybe a little bit of what to trust it with, maybe what not to trust it with when it comes to using prompts to images.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Again, so if you're going to try to get an image from AI, best play, you can use Midjourney and those. Probably the most better user experience, either a ChatGPT Plus account or Bing Chat. And when using generative AI for images, there's a couple things I want to state. One is use some judgment when using it. So if you're creating images with generative AI, you shouldn't necessarily, same thing with when I showed that parent update example, I clarified, basically you should not be trying to trick anyone. So if you are going to use these images and kind of pass them off as like examples of your camp in any way, you should probably rethink that. Because at some point they're going to figure out your camp doesn't look like it's in Switzerland, or whatever it is. So be careful but when prompting for images, that's probably within the last month, 2 months, it has improved greatly. So you're just going to kind of put in some information, and GPT is actually going to make your prompt into a better image prompt and send it to a model, and it's going to give you image. It's going to do a lot of that behind the background. You won't even see it. But I did see, Danny, I saw a question.
Yeah.
So have you thought about improving functionality of features within UltraCamp using AI? I like he gave his suggestion here. So like cabin matching. One of the things that I do want to mention is we're always open to ideas, and it's a great idea. And that is one I have specifically kind of looked into. Where it's difficult with AI is minor information. And so it's just, there's things where, yes, we are definitely exploring and looking for ways to improve, but we are very much going to put safety and ethics and things first. So there's just things that it's just going to take time as we explore kind of in the background, but absolutely generative AI is capable of helping with that stuff. There's things that we're not comfortable with yet as far as certain laws and things of that sort.
Fantastic. We have a question directly from a attendee here. So Sarah, I'm greenlit you to be able to ask your question. I don't know if you have a mic available, but if you want to ask it, feel free to unmute and ask it. Give you a couple seconds here to ask your question, or maybe you already put it here in the chat. Sarah, are you there? Maybe not. I saw another one here. Feel free to pop in, Sarah, but there's another one on Preventing AI from using your materials
Yeah.
that Dave asked. How can you prevent AI from using your materials, website writing, blog, etc., to formulate answers to the general public? So can you speak to what if you are trying to opt out of
Yeah.
AI learning?
Yep. So in order to block AI from learning, it's kind of going to be the same rules that you would use to block other certain bots from exploring your website and taking certain content. So in particular, when it comes to websites, there is a kind of file. In fact, if you would go at the end of any website and you do /robots.txt, I think that's what it is. That's going to be a set of instructions that you kind of, so that file is what most websites have, and it stops, so you can stop search engines from displaying your websites in that way by having something in there. You can also block AI from scraping your website by putting something in there. And if you just were to Google essentially your question and maybe add robot.txt file, you're going to find the exact thing that you just need to paste into your robot.txt file.
Awesome. Sarah, are you there? If you want to, you're more than welcome to ask a question. You don't have to. Um, and if not, there's another one here that I see in terms of using AI to analyze. The question is, can you copy and paste pieces of staff handbook and using prompts, have ChatGPT review it? So using AI as an analytic tool, so what are maybe the ups and downs, the pluses and minuses of using GPT or generative AI as an analytics tool to help you maybe review and clarify different pieces of something like a handbook?
Yeah, sorry. So, oh, that's gone. I was reviewing it again. So can you rephrase that, Donnie, real quick?
Yeah. What are the ups and downs of using generative AI for things like analytics, like analyze or summarize? Like, what are the things that what are the upsides of that? Maybe what are briefly some of the downsides of that, or things to keep in mind?
Yeah, when it comes to, so summarizing, it actually does a pretty fantastic job of catching the main points that you need to know about. I haven't like caught it do like a terrible job or ever like really make up stuff when you're asking it to summarize. Analyze can be difficult, can be different depending on how you go about it. And it's not, so one of the things you can do, especially if you've got a GBT Plus account, is you can upload, let's say, an Excel sheet into GPT, and then you can ask GPT questions about that data. You can have it do complex calculations and things of that sort. And so where some difficulty kind of comes in with that is because in order for it to read and interact with this Excel sheet, it's actually writing its own code in Python, running that code and like manipulating and getting the data from the Excel in that way. And so sometimes it can kind of mess up with the code just a little bit, but ultimately it tends to catch that. And it's like, whoop, here's an error. But for the most part, the advice I'd give for anything is never trust AI to do all the work.
Hmm.
You're always fact checking, you're always reviewing it. Never, it's not a final draft tool. It is a first draft tool. So always treat it as such. Have it give you a good idea of the data that you want to analyze, but definitely do some digging before you publish anything for sure.
Right on. Let's call it there because we're on the hour. But I just want to reiterate: if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to Spencer by emailing spencer@ultracamp.com. And if there's other topics you want us to kind of explore and cover, feel free to drop an email to academy@ultracamp.com. There are so many case uses for camp. It's hard to imagine, actually. And so we're at the forefront of this. We want to be able to have these conversations with you, bring these things to you to make your life easier. But Spencer, thank you for that last point, putting a point onto. This is not the end all be all. It is a first draft tool, not a final draft tool. With that, thank you all so much for coming. Be on the lookout for this in our newsletter and on our website, a recording of this session. will be out soon. Have a great afternoon, morning, whatever time it is for you. Have a great day. And thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Thanks so much. Have a good one.